Hello, everybody, and good afternoon from OEO. We're coming to the end of our year. It's been an exciting year for us. We have good news for some of you. For those of you that are not micro lenders, we're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping here, and then you can hop off, and micro lenders, you'll need to stay on. Jamie, unfortunately, cannot be here today. We're at the end of our governmental year. Lots of excitement going on around here. As some of you saw in the news, we may or may not have a budget, which means we may or may not be here on Monday. We are cautiously optimistic. For those of you who have ever come to SBA headquarters, we have an almost view of the Capitol, and we don't see a lot of news trucks, so we're cautiously optimistic we will have some sort of budget approved here very soon, and we'll be here on Monday. But in the event you see your evening news and government shutdown, that'll sadly include us. So if we don't answer the phone or respond to your email, that'll be because we're not allowed to. So let's talk about Community Advantage for a moment. You know, as of last Friday, CA lenders have approved over $119 million, almost $120 million in CA loans. And that's an increase of 20% from this time last year. So we are absolutely ecstatic about that, and the administrator has also been notified and is extremely happy. So keep going. You still have a few more days to keep building up those numbers. I wanted to take a minute to talk about center turn times. If you haven't already, please check in and check out our SBA One program for faster processing times. The SBA One platform was made available to Community Advantage lenders of May of 2016, and it allows for processing a lot quicker than if you were to do it through the eTran platform. Currently, the average turn time on eTran is 9 business days to assignment. Compare that to SBA One, it's only 3 days to assignment. The average processing time on eTran is 10 days, but on SBA One, it's 4. So based upon those times, you still might be able to finish something up if you started in SBA One. And going forward, keep that in mind, because as we always hear, that time is a big factor in keeping those customers online. Let's see here. At this time, CA lenders are not scheduled for mandatory usage of SBA One for non-delegated loans, but we still encourage you to try. If you're a lender that has not received SBA One training, please reach out to your district office or make contact here with somebody in the office. Jamie or Bob will be glad to help you with your SBA One training. And as a reminder for those of you that have a fiscal year ending 9/30, remember the CA program requires assessment by an auditor in your financial statements regarding compliance with our program loan loss reserve. And some other news, some of you know Anika Brown, and she has worked with a lot of you on SBA One in the past. And we're happy to say that she has been given the opportunity to take a 6-month rotation for Department of Veterans Affairs. So this will be her last week here for at least 6 months. So anybody that wants to reach out to her, go ahead. And we're wishing her well and good luck at her time at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Okay, so for all you CA lenders that are not micro lenders, I'm now going to go over some micro lending house notes, but for the most part, thank you very much for a great year. Keep going. And at this point, CA lenders that are not micro lenders as well can hop off the line and keep things going. I tried to make that as quick as possible for you, so I think I set a land speed record, so you should be happy, and Jamie should be just thrilled that I got all that done for her. So again, thank you very much for a great year. Now, moving on to microlending, we've been, as a lot of you know, been doing the annual site visits via our field office, and we had changed our site visit checklist to go into a little bit more depth to give us some feedback of where we need to do some of our training and work and improve our program and increase our communication. And we've been getting our summer field visits back, and we're starting to see a little bit of a trend, so I wanted to take a minute to talk about a few things. The first one is, when you prepare a microloan note, and this is extremely important, so everybody that's taking notes for the EDs or anybody that's in your compliance department, write this one down. If you're preparing that microloan note, you must have the SBA language on the note, not as a amendment, not as a secondary document, not on a loan commitment or on any other document. It must be within the note. And that language is that this note is pledged to the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, as collateral. Further assignment cannot be made without prior consent of the SBA. If you do not have this language on your notes, you need to go back and correct that. If for some reason we had to take over this portfolio, you only get credit for notes that have the SBA language on them. And if your state law doesn't allow it to be assigned over to us because you did not put this assignment on here, you do not get credit for that microloan, and thus you would need to come up with more money to make us whole. This is a major compliance issue, and you must have this language on every note. So when you're doing your quality control check within your organization, please go back and make sure that this has been done and that you do so going forward. Also, we've noticed credit elsewhere has been missing from the file. What do we mean? Well, again, in our SOP, you have to show that there was a reason to make this loan using SBA funds, i.e. there was no credit elsewhere available. So what can you do to satisfy this? You can't not have anything, but you could do something like a market study. You could check the banks in your area and put them on a spreadsheet and say, okay, they don't do loans under $50,000. They don't do startups. They don't do loans under $20,000. And you certify that, and on those bank contact names, you'd have a phone number and maybe somebody you'd talk to. Yes, you could put in a denial letter, which would be ideal, but we understand that not everybody is going to get a rejection letter from the bank because they're sometimes told verbally, yeah, we don't do loans under $50,000. But if you can get a market study or get a program guide for your area and include that in that it's current, that it's updated every year, we will take that. What we cannot accept is nothing. You got to have something in there that shows that there was no credit available and thus you made this microloan. And lastly, one of the things we saw is some of the lenders out there, you've been charging a flat rate fee, maybe just $30 late fee on every loan. The SOP clearly states that it's 5% of the payment amount. This is very important because if you have a monthly payment of only $100 on a small microloan and you're charging a flat rate fee of $30, you're having a 30% yield, and that is not compliant. You are entitled to recover if there was a bounce check or bounced ACH, direct fees that were created because of non-payment. But you cannot just charge a blanket flat rate late fee on every loan. It is limited to 5%. Okay, so that's what we've been seeing on the site visits. That's what you need to let your quality control or compliance officer know within your organization so that it'll be corrected for next year's site visit, or if you haven't had one yet, for this coming site visit. We are coming towards the end of the year, so you've got just a few more days left to close microloans to make sure you get as much credit for next year's grant as we can possibly give you. Not only do you have to close the loan by the end of this month, you have to have the microloan data entered into IMPERS by the 7th of October. So you got to close and enter the data. So you have to close by the end of September. You have to have the data entered by the 7th of October. And as a reminder, this year you need 6 loans minimum to get your full credit for the grant. Now, also keep in mind, when you enter in your data into Empress, make sure it is complete. That is completely done, and it doesn't have you in a pending status or incomplete status, because we can only count loans that are noted as completed. So if it's not completed, it will not count towards your total count. So please take time to get that done. Don't wait till the last minute. And quite honestly, if we do not get a continual resolution to keep our door, I'd enter it in today or tomorrow, because on Monday, if we're closed, the window does not get an exception. We ran into this before, and we did not get an exception, and I would not expect it to happen. So as a ounce of caution, I would start entering your loans into Empress right now. Don't wait. All right, so that's it for our housekeeping, and we're going to jump into our favorite time of the year, which is the Grant Reimbursement Workbook Calculator. And with me is Dave Ritter, and we're going to go through this. First, I want to take a moment to thank everybody last year with all your help. Again, we're not programmers. We did this in our alleged spare time. So having you help fix a lot of this has been a massive help, and we're going to go through and go through this year. It's going to look very similar to what it looked like last year, with everything fixed, hopefully. And we are working on a new interface and a new version coming up for next year. Hopefully, it'll also be a grant application and reimbursement workbook. So we're taking great strides. We're working diligently to try to make this grant process quicker, which I know is number one demand, and easier. So we're going to jump right in here with the grant reimbursement presentation. Again, the 27 workbook, it runs in an Excel format in Microsoft. I cannot guarantee that it'll work in Google Docs, so Microsoft Excel is the working format. The whole idea is to have a single data input section for the grant reimbursement. It still has its built-in compliance and alerts and warnings, so it will highlight areas that you need to correct. Again, we have shown that this has made fewer revisions and faster payments from last year, and in keeping with paperwork reduction and trying to kill a few less trees, we definitely have allowed this to be used as a PDF conversion e-signature. So let's jump right in here and get started. And Dave, why don't you give them a little heads up here of what they can expect this year.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome, everyone. We've tried to improve the workbook, the printing, the way it looks, the way it comes through, the PDF, and all the other scenarios that existed last year. We've tried to improve some of those. Hopefully, we've improved all of them. What we, the analysts, are going to do, they will be sending you this workbook here soon. If you haven't already gotten, some of you might have already gotten the workbook for this coming grant project period, but if not, we will be sending it out soon. And what we will have and what you will see are this, in your input page, we will input your name, street address, city, state, so forth and so on, your DUNS number, your federal grant number, which is going to be the SBA HQ 16Y number, and your recipient account number, which will be it will begin with 6503300EZ. So those are significant numbers. The 16Y is self-explanatory. The 6503 recipient account number stands for fiscal year 2016. We also will be inputting your approved budget, which ties to what you've received in your notice of award and what you sent in with your application. We'll be filling in that data. So please, whatever data you see in the white fields, the unhighlighted fields on your input page, those are items you can change also, but we've input. And hopefully we don't make any mistakes in that input. So, and make sure that the red notice, you notice the red notices here. These
Dave.
Chris, this, you know what? This is a very good slide.
It is. It's the best slide ever.
So we'll be looking at all the red warnings that show up when you input your quarterly information, but please make sure the data we enter in here is correct. A lot of this information, some of this information has to also tie to your SAMS report, and make sure SAMS is updated. It's something that has to be updated yearly, so make sure that's up to date and current, because if it's not, guess what? You don't get paid. Denver will not pay you the funds, even if your report is perfect and we've submitted it and we've turned it around in 2 or 3 days, and the submission is sent to Denver through grants management. You will not get your money. So,
and that brings me up to a point. We're trying to get our clearly, as most of you know, our systems don't easily talk to each other right now. So we're going to have the analysts send you an email when they have completed and approved, and it's been approved by Dan, the grant reimbursement and sent downstairs to our grant department. At that point, we're hoping that you will put on the calendar 3 weeks and call us if you do not receive your money, because what has happened is when it gets to Denver and the SAMS data doesn't match, and we're having a big breakdown with them contacting us saying there's a SAMS difference. So until we get the systems talking to each other, when you get an email that says your loan has, or your grant reimbursement's been approved and sent to grants management, we want you to call us in 3 weeks. I don't want you to call me in 6 months and say, or 9 months and say, we haven't gotten any reimbursements. Because I'm having people send you those emails and keep them, so we're giving you notification because we want to keep Denver on notice as well so that we can get this process quicker, and quicker.
Okay, so we'll also be, in this initial stage, inputting your yearly milestones. And we pick this up from, obviously, the application you sent in. Again, please check this information. We will input all the information for you up to a point, and then it's up to you to check, and then your quarterly reimbursement request will be on your, for you to complete and submit. Each quarter you'll see has different colors. We've tried to synchronize everything here so that you can follow it easier. The tabs at the bottom of the workbook or the Excel spreadsheet show you the quarters and are all color-coded. As you can see, quarter one's going to be in red.
Oh, Dave. All right.
All right.
So as you go in through the input screens, and we're going to show you all this. Last year I jumped back and forth between the spreadsheet and the PowerPoint. We're going to go through the PowerPoint completely and then do a live demo of the spreadsheet. So in your detailed expenditure areas, you can see that it's listed here in red, and that you could type in data directly on your input page of the 270 supplement, or you can do it in your TA section. as well. So we're still giving you options of where you can type in detailed information about your expenses. Now, by now, everybody knows you just can't write in under other audit. We need it to say A133 prorated share of audit. We need nouns, adjectives, verbs in this description. One-word answers are not going to get this approved. They are reading these narratives to see that they are compliant with the technical assistance aspects of this, so they want as much clarity as possible in regards to the details that you put into this report.
I'd like to add something there. It's very important that you send us one way or any way that what the information is behind the numbers. Chris mentioned you can type it in the detailed expenditure worksheet. You can also type it in section 2.6 of your input page. You can send us a nice email of the information, the detailed information. You can also send an attachment. But please, if you don't send anything, it will be kicked back to you and then will probably go into another queue spot, and you will be delayed in getting your payment. So this is one of the nits that the analysts have said a lot of the intermediaries are forgetting or not giving us enough information on what's behind the numbers that they're submitting, like for travel and for supplies and for those type of things. So just be aware of that.
And as you go into the Personal Services tab, make sure you've got the name and the title. Again, you'll put in your yearly salary, the months that they covered in the quarter, and how much you paid them. The yellow section or the percent section will always auto-calculate for you so that we can all be on the same page. One of the big things is keep in mind, work with your analyst. If you're one of the few states that doesn't work a 40-hour work week, make sure you gross up your numbers, because that is the standard in which all of these grants are approved on a 40-hour week. I see some of you are asking questions. I'm going to hold most of them to the end of the PowerPoint and or during the live demo. So go ahead and ask, and I'll get to them and read them, and later on we'll open up the phone line.
One thing you want to be aware of, your first quarter in your personal services section, you should input what you submitted with your application on your original A10. Think of this now. Your original A10, you build from what you submitted. So the first quarter, you've input all the people and their salaries of what was on the original A10. Quarter goes by, you've added people, or people have left the institution, so forth, and you replace them. That information needs to be input then on quarter one. So you're building this personal services page. Once you submit something that hasn't, an employee that wasn't on there originally, you're going to have to, guess what? Send us a resume, a job description, a 1081, and a revised A10. So you're building this A10 all throughout the year if you have changes.
All right. Well, you didn't let me guess what, Dave, but all right. You gave me the answer already, so I appreciate it. Okay, so moving on, we have the personal services done. And you recall in the middle of this spreadsheet input area, you've got a double check area. So the information you load in input and on personal services, they need to equal. On one of them, we're breaking out fed and non-fed, and on the personal services, we're combining. We need those numbers to match. Very often, they did not match or add up to be equal, and that was a source of return. If you see red in this section and you can't figure it out, call your analyst. Do not go on and continue to submit for reimbursement. If this is red, it's dead. We're not going to approve it. We have to fix it. So don't waste your time. We got to figure out what we can do to get it compliant. Same thing holds true at the bottom of the page. Should be very familiar where you're getting your 3 green boxes for when you're putting in your reported TA hours. You know, we're checking your cost per hour, we're checking the 75-25 rule, and making sure we're staying within those compliance. If it's red, we've got to talk. We need to fix that. We have to adjust our budget. We need to do something. If you're off, you know, as an example, maybe by 1%, and you know the second quarter you're going to be at 80% or 88%, like in this example, and you talk to your analyst, we could probably get you an exception on that on the first quarter. We're not going to be able to give you an exception on the fourth quarter. But, you know, if it's red and you can't figure it out, this is the time to pick up the phone and call your analyst, send them an email, and let's work it out. And the other double checks here is the ratio between the hours you're reporting and the hours you're billing. We generously give a 25% variance here between what you billed and what you reported. A lot of you hit it pretty much right on the head, 100%. They equal out, which is great. Another area to take a look at is the deadlines areas. As you all remember, you've got in this screenshot, it's from last year, but in the live version I'll show you, you have a countdown for when you can get your extensions and your budget modifications. Take a look at this. Right now we're at the beginning of the cycle, so it's not a big deal. But later on, keep an eye on this, make it a habit to take a look. And then you also have a matching contribution counter. We try to discourage overmatching. We want you to be able to use that extra money any way you want. If you can match it, great. It's just a guideline for you. But more importantly, if you undermatch, we're going to have a problem, and it'll turn red. Let's say in the first quarter you only had 24%, but next quarter you're going to do 28%. You need to talk to the analyst. You also need to put that in your TA narrative, so we know that that's coming, and you know, we're aware. So communication is key. That's really what these notifications are all about. And as you know, you have Form 270, 425 numbers. You can look at them and make sure they support what you're trying to do. The narrative section is at the very, very bottom. You'll go through, you'll type it in, it'll transfer over. Like any spreadsheet, you have to work in that top bar, and we'll show you that live. But the top bar is where you're going to type and edit, and then it'll fill in the box. Some of you don't like that. You can still go back to a Microsoft Word format or some sort of other written supplement if you prefer not to do that. This is, you know, trying to work all within one system, and hopefully future interfaces will be more narrative friendly. As I mentioned last year, the hyperlinks are just below your budget. This keeps you from having to scroll all through the workbook. It's just there as a convenience, and we will show you that live.
One thing I want to add, some of you I've noticed are still, for some reason, can't make yourself get rid of the old Form 270 and 425 and so forth. You're still submitting those signed documents when you submit your reimbursement request. Please use the forms that we supplied you with on the tabs of your workbook. Do not use the old forms.
Yeah, the forms we built in here are now compliant and work with the Omni Circular. So if you're using stuff dated way back in the Mr. Peabody way back machine, don't do that anymore. We're doing everything we can to help you stay compliant so you don't have any audit issues.
The reason I say that is because some of you use those forms, you highlight them in yellow, you print the red numbers in red and the black numbers in black, but keep in mind, when we scan these, print them and scan them, those highlights and those fonts that aren't black do not come through very well. And once they're scanned and printed and scanned a couple times before they get to Denver, the forms are unreadable, and that's another reason why Denver will not pay. So make sure you use these forms at the bottom of your workbook.
In black and white. Don't change the font color, please. When it comes time to print, there are tabs at the bottom of every worksheet. They're colored, like this one in red. Best slide ever, Dave.
Best slide. That's the best slide I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Except when we were in, Chicago.
Chicago, that was a good one.
I saw a couple good ones
that
there.
was.
But,
yeah. So they'll be color coordinated to the quarter in which you're working in, and we're going to show you some really cool shortcuts on how to print. You can go down one at a time and print them. You can convert them to PDF, and I'll even show you a way to do them all at one time. Very exciting. So you'll just check yourself right down there, and we'll show that live. This will be thrilling, absolutely.
Best slide I've ever seen.
Thank you. And again, you may use e-signature. The new Adobe has built-in e-sig options that you can utilize, and I know some of you use other software platforms. It's fine, just as long as it puts it in, locks it, and I can't, or Dave, or anybody else can't remove them, and it certifies that it is you that is signing and being responsible. Otherwise, if you have to go old school, print it out, sign it, and scan it in. So it's time to submit. Dave, what would you like to see at that submission time?
Well, I would like to see a nice compressed email with the documents that I need to see, which are all the, approximately about 15 pages of documents, and everything signed properly, whether it be with the e-sig or manual form. Keep in mind, if you sign in these forms, we have to see it. It has to be legible. Some people have a light hand when they sign in ink. Some people, their e-sig is so small we can't even read it. So those are reasons that things will be kicked back. But what I like to see are the forms as a PDF, and then the workbook as the Excel. These are all attachments that you send with your email. So basically, you would have two attachments: the Excel workbook and the PDFs.
Minimum. And if you don't know how to combine all the PDFs into one, then you can send all the PDF attachments, but we need this Excel workbook each reimbursement request. And
the size is, we're limited to 10 megabytes, so keep that in mind also.
Yeah, the Adobe allows you to save as high definition, medium, low. We have found medium and low work fine. You do not need to save this as a high definition document. I know we've had some fun today and we were doing some kidding, but it really is a team effort. We continually need your feedback on how to improve this. It is our goal eventually one day to have this as an online system, and these spreadsheets are going to act as our architectural mainframe of basically how we're doing our coding when it comes time to get our day in front of a programmer. So keep giving us the feedback. We definitely listen. We may not integrate everything you ask, but it is definitely going on a list so that if we get a better technology platform, we can continue to evolve this. Like I said, we're hoping next year to actually change the interface. So, yeah, that was one of the things that was brought back, but we couldn't get it done yet for this year, so we are planning to do that. So now, hold on, I'm going to attempt to change over so we can do the live demo of the spreadsheet. Now, I'll give this a few seconds. In theory, there should be an Excel spreadsheet that looks very familiar to you. And this is the input page of the grant calculator for 2017. Now, the first thing I'd like to point out is this upper left-hand corner that I've made yellow. This is dated when you're submitting your documents or the quarter end. You know, whichever date you want to put there. Generally, it's the date in which you're submitting is the date you're going to put up here. This is going to change every time. Do not just leave it here at 9/30/16. The date matters.
Because this date is then input into your 270, 425, and all the forms as the date, basically the date you're signing the submission, the forms.
So again, we'll look at some different interface areas of the spreadsheet. Coming down the left is going to be your lender information. At the time, I could say I was greatly influenced by Dave's radio playing in the background. So in this particular time this year, it was Funky Town Development. So Dave was definitely getting his...
I was also dancing at the time.
Yeah, it was a sight to see. So you can see all this data is going to be put in here. Make sure it's all correct when you receive it. We are human beings, and some of us have fatter fingers than others and could actually make a mistake. Get everything loaded in here, including the phone number and your milestones, as well as your budget. Now keep in mind, we have a section over to the far left that's going to have your grant, bonus grant, analyst, and grant management person. Let's see if I can move this over here. Hang on.
Chris meant right. But
to the right, my other left. And down here, we have an area called approved modification date. As long as that's blank, there should never be a modification to these numbers. As soon as you modify these numbers, I need a date here, because that's our only way to guarantee that we know there was a budget change. Just like last year, we have, again, and mentioned before, we have red notes that pop up throughout this document, such as numbers here should match the notice of award. So they're little friendly reminders, as well as cells that will turn red if there are any issues. Now, below the budget area, once again, we have the hyperlink areas that will let you quick link to any form. So I know that it's a long way to scroll across the bottom of the page here, but if you wanted to go to the PPR in the fourth quarter, all you have to do is left click once, and you have arrived to the PPR. Then go back to the far left corner, click once, left click again, and hit input, and you return back to the input page. So if you're like me and Dave, we put stuff in, we sometimes want to go look at the form. We just don't trust that the computer's going to get it right. So that's a quick way for you to do it so you don't have to scroll. You'll notice a change this year, routing number. We put a reminder here, payment made per SAMS. So your account number and routing number have to match what was in SAMS at the time of application. If it changes, you need to email and call us immediately, otherwise you're going to have a problem. So as we scroll down, we have our familiar entry area. So again, we're in the red section.
I just wanted to highlight this. Above that supplement 270 there, most of that, if not all of that information, is going to be input by your analyst, not by you.
Up top.
So, up top here.
Everything in the gray zone.
All of that's going to be input by the analyst. Now we get into what you will be inputting.
There we are.
And you will be inputting the red for the first quarter, the red quarter one information.
So let's go for it. We're going to go live here. We're going to click right here in Personal Services, and we're going to do the federal portion and the non-federal portion. And then that's going to move to all of your forms throughout the first quarter. Now you'll notice I have a percentage down here at the bottom of the total. This is merely just an indicator for you that in this particular case we've used 39.75% of our yearly budget right now on personnel. So that's just a kind of a heads up for you as we go through. Then we're going to put in our fringe, and we're going to put in our non-federal. And it's totaling up and telling us we're at 33%. That might be a time for you to think about it. You almost have 40% here, 33% there. That may cause you to go, So keep that in mind. It's just information so that you can come back and be informed and maybe make this a little bit easier as you go. So let's see. We are on travel, but you know what? On this travel example, we're not going to do a non-federal match this time because, again, it's the cumulative total that we have to come up with all of our match. So I'm going to run over here to supplies, and we just got a little bit of toner and paper that quarter, so we're okay there. And then we're going to run, using our scroll bar, right over here to overhead in our indirect cost section, which was approved because our indirect cost is greater than 10%, so we had an approval from an agency that allowed that, so we are good to go. So now we have our 270 supplement filled in, but we've got to finish our personal services supplements because if we don't, and I'll let this catch up with you, you can look down here at the bottom in our double check section, and our double check section is green and red. We've got to fix that. All three have to be green.
That's the best slide I've ever seen.
It is. It's an incredible slide.
It's incredible. How do you get those things to do that?
It's magic. So we're going to go to the personal services, and it's blank. So our double check system takes a look at that.
Like I said before, you want to input every one that was approved with your original A10, on your original A10. You might not be putting in that they worked this project quarter, this first quarter, but we want to build this data from your approved budget, your A10 that was submitted.
So we've added James Brown here, the TA director. Gets paid $100,000 a year, and this quarter we paid them $25,000. All right, so let's run back. Now, just real quick before I run back, over here to the left, you see this kind of weird blank box. In the second, third, fourth, and possibly fifth quarter, if you added somebody new, there's going to be a red alert that shows up all the way over here to the far right. That's telling you have a new person, and if you have a new person, that's where we need the resume, job description, and the 1081.
And a revised A10.
Yeah.
Signed revised A10.
There we go. And we come back to our input double check section, and there it is. It's all green. We hit it out of the park. So we now have the first part okay. So we're going to keep going. Well, we notice here the match contribution's red because it's 30.76. It's more than what we need. We're just trying to tell you, you don't have to overmatch us. We want you to have the freedom of your money, but if you budgeted already as a permanent overmatch, then we're going to take the money. But if you didn't, you don't have to overmatch. Try not to. I know that sometimes it's a condition of maybe the grant that you got that was a non-federal grant. So we're coming down through our double check section. Over here to the right, again, the deadline section. Need to move over here. We're just getting in a habit to take a look at it. We're nowhere near the end of a deadline, but we took a look, and you'll see that it updated as of today. It does it automatically. So we're going to try to keep you caught up on that every time you go in. So every time you take a look, you would look at the first quarter numbers, make sure that's the way you think your form would look. And then we got to do our last part down here. We've got to put some TA hours in because we don't have 3 green at the bottom. We've got to have green. So we're going to put this in. We collected our hours in our TA workbook collection system or spreadsheet that identifies who got TA, who taught the TA, what type of TA, how many hours of TA. We need all the supporting data because if we come in on a field visit and you tell me that you did 20 hours in the first quarter of pre-TA with people, I should see, however you got to 20 hours, Joe Smith, Jerry Brown, whoever, all listed out equaling 20, and what type of TA was taught and who taught it. So that's all very, very important. And our administration hours. And you'll notice our administration hours don't count as pre or as post. So keep that in mind, and we take a look. We now have all of our green down here at the bottom. We're in pretty good shape. Then we could move on to our narrative section. So we have 2 places to put in our narrative. Like we mentioned before, this narrative section should look fairly familiar, like you used to do in maybe Microsoft Word or a separate document. We do allow it to be entered here on the detailed expenditure as well. So if you wanted to come down here into, I don't know, would we do equipment, Dave?
No, not with the normally not with the microloan program. There is no equipment. Anything over $5,000 you would put in here, but then you would have to give that to SBA at the end of the project period, and I don't think anyone wants to give up their equipment. And normally for our program, every item that you would purchase would be less than $5,000, unless of course you purchased
maybe a Tesla somehow got approved by Dan, which in that case at the end of the quarter or at the end of the year you would have to give that Tesla to, I don't know, SBA. Maybe the deputy would take care of that.
Maybe.
But I doubt Dan approved any Tesla, so there should never be anything in equipment. But we would go to supply, and like every other spreadsheet, we would have to go up into the top bar up here and maybe write some information about what we purchased. So supplies. I think I mentioned we bought some paper and toner, which was about $125. So we had 100 here in our Fed and 25 in our match, so we're all good. And where did all these numbers come from? They came from our input page. So it's working. The links are there, but feel free to double check us in case we have any issues. Or, again, we could write here in the narrative section. So in this particular area, 2.1, we're talking about milestones not achieved, probably because, I don't know, I slept in. So I slept in, and like Van Winkle, I slept for 3 months and I got nothing done. But I've written it, and there it is. It shows up in the narrative section.
And these narratives, keep in mind, these narratives have to tie out to what you put on your TA hours. So this all kind of has to flow. One thing I wanted to show, if you look at the Q1 area there, that's important. That's very important to make sure there's no red numbers in that section. If there's red numbers there, that means we're going to kick back the report to you and ask questions.
That's that generous 25% area of reported versus billed hours. And you can see right here, this one's within 97.12% of each other. So you billed for 520 hours, but you only reported 505. We do this because we know that sometimes people round off on their hours and it doesn't have to be exact. And we've been able to be generous with a 25% leeway. I know a lot of you hit it right on the dot at 100%, and that's great because your TA systems will do that. But we need to get it within that 5% area. So we've got green, 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 and we, wrote all of our narratives down at the bottom. And so we are now at the point where you could do a couple of things. First, you might go all the way to the gray between the red and the green quarters, and there's a summary sheet. Now, if all the green colors are not enough of an indicator of everything that's working, and you want to read about it, it's all right here. These are all the warning sheets that turn things green. And, we're telling you you're overmatching. So if the percentage in the red wasn't good enough, we'll tell it to you in writing. It's all overwrite. So if there's nothing else in this section, it's all green, we're in pretty good shape. And again, we take a look at our 270, and it's all filled in. It propagated all of your ID numbers. So as long as they're correct on the input page, we will never send this back to you for having a wrong ID number as long as you don't change it. It has your from and to date because you put everything in red, and you're good to go. So these are ready to print. Now, as I mentioned, you can go down here, left-click one time on the detailed expenditure, go under File, and hit Print. And you can print them out one at a time. So on mine, it would go to my printer, and I print them out. Or perhaps I could be going to Adobe and convert it to Adobe and print it out and then apply an e-signature. Now, I promised there's a way to do a mass printing. So, again, I left-click over here to quarter one. I go over to the match letter, and I hold down the Control button, Shift button, and notice all the reds have now been highlighted at the bottom of the page. Then I go under Print, hit Print, and it's thinking about it, but lo and behold, I've lost the spreadsheet. Hang on a second. Okay, lo and behold, you'll see down here, 1 of 15. All those 15 pages have now been converted to a PDF, and you can convert them to a PDF and apply your e-signature to them. So I'm just scrolling through them right now, and you can double check them and read them, and right there, after you print it, is your signature area, and you can take up that signature area and the printed area and put your big e-signature right there, and then you can email these off.
Make sure we can read it.
It's got to. It just can't be a black blob. We actually have to be able to read it. If you can't read it or barely read it, we'll never get to read it.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're actually not sharing Adobe, so we are not seeing what you're talking about right now.
Oh, rats. Okay. Well, sorry about that. But anyway, for those of you that have seen Adobe, you would know what it turned into. I didn't turn it in Adobe. I was working off of the print screen area. So hopefully, again, that will not interrupt your presentation too much. So we're going to jump back here and answer a few questions, because that would be the end of our first quarter submission, and we'll open up some questions. I see the first one goes all the way back to credit elsewhere. What if a customer certifies with the statement that they were denied credit elsewhere? Well, that's way better than nothing, and we like that. just make sure that certification kind of gives us a little who, what, where, when, and how. Tell us, bank XYZ did not give me this or offer me a loan, and, it'd be great if they even put down a person and a phone number. But at least a certification is way better than nothing. So that's a great question, and I hope that all of you can use that alternative form to paper your files with the correct amount of credits elsewhere documentation. Now, do we have any other questions? I see we got a little, well, we did have a hand up. Do we have any questions? We'll open it up and allow our operator to open the lines.
We did have another question through the notes. Will the PowerPoint be emailed to all of the participants after the webinar?
Yes, generally like I've done in the past, once this comes back, we're recording it, and I will send a link out to YouTube. So unless you specifically just want the PowerPoint and want to skip over all my senseless banter. If that's the case, you can reach out to your analyst and they can just send you the PowerPoint only. So absolutely.
And right at the moment, I'm not seeing any phone questions.
No phone questions. Haven't seen any typed in. This is a repeat for most people for last year. We do have a couple new lenders that have come on board. So hopefully they've learned something. Hopefully you've seen a new trick or two on this PowerPoint and or Excel spreadsheet that you can utilize and save some time. Otherwise, it looks like, Dave, you did such a great job. Nobody has any questions, which is phenomenal. And we'll just, again, reiterate a couple housekeeping notes. We'll continue to be doing webinars throughout the year, so keep an eye out. Today, we doubled it up with the OEO. We were thinking about doing it on Thursday, but with everything going on here around the office, we pretty much took over the OEO time. And Dan has been able to come in from another meeting, so he's here, and let's see if he has any updates for us or housekeeping notes. Dan?
I don't have a lot of housekeeping or updates. The one thing that I wanted to remind everybody of, everybody on the call at this point is a microlender, I take it, because we're looking through the grant workbook. A couple of things. I have to review everything that comes through the office before it goes down to grants management for their review and approval, and finally on to our finance center for payment. And the couple of things that I see with the grant reimbursements when they're coming across my desk, number one thing, you have to remember that all of your expenses have to be related to the TA program, to your technical assistance and training, either pre-loan or post-loan under the SBA microloan program. So you can't bill for things like loan underwriting or loan servicing under the TA grant. So the grant is only here to help reimburse you for your costs of providing training and technical assistance. Now, it'll also pay your expenses for administering your training and technical assistance. So we'll give you those admin costs and those non-pre-loan, post-loan hours that you spend on your program, but it's all got to be related in one way or another to training and technical assistance. So I just want to reiterate that just sort of as an overarching piece of guidance. Second thing is that you need to be careful and you need to be thorough when documenting on your reimbursement forms what you're asking to have reimbursed, what your expenses are. We need to be able to understand what the expense is, and we need to understand how it's related to your TA program. If we have answers to those things, It's itemized so that we can see, what we're paying for and why. It will help speed up your reimbursement. You'll get your money more quickly. Chances are we won't have to go back to you for revisions or ask questions about, what is this expense? How does it relate to your TA program? If we can get that information up front, it will, it will help cut down significantly on the number of reimbursements that I have to request revisions on. So that's pretty much all I had.
Thanks. We did have a question come in, a great question. Has there been any legislative progress on the 75-25 rule? And sadly, no, nothing yet, and I don't think we're going to get it in this legislative period. So I would say between this and the election year, this administration will not be able to address the 75-25 rule. All the more reason, being an election year, you need to highlight it, bring it up when you talk to people running for office or trying to get back into office, to make sure that when this transition's over, that this stays a priority. So great question. Both the House and Senate bill are still up there sitting in committee, and unfortunately I don't have my Schoolhouse Rock video up here, but as you know, if it sits in committee too long, it'll die. So we're going to need all of your help to make sure you talk to anybody running for office or trying to get back into office and let them keep this as a priority. So great question. Thank you. Any other questions? The floor is open. I got Dan in the room, so you can ask all sorts of questions. Everybody's still recovering from Chicago, I guess, and taking all that information that we provided there. So that's fantastic. So if there are not going to be any more questions, I will wrap this up and thank you very much for your time. If you have a suggestion for something you would like us to do a webinar on, please feel free to get a hold of me at james.webb with 2 B's at sba.gov. If you feel your organization needs individual attention, feel free to give us a contact either to your analyst or myself, and we can do a custom presentation to address whatever need you may be needing. That could be TA practice, how to use this calculator one-on-one, IMPERS, just about everything. CAVERS, one of the things out there is CAVERS is optional, but it's a really good tool to make sure that somebody doesn't have federal indebtedness, and it's free. To use, you'll need to work with your district office to set that up, but we can help you with that as well in working with field office. So again, any ideas and feedback are always welcome, and we really appreciate your time today. So if there are no further questions, on behalf of everybody here in Microloan and OEO, thank you very much, and for a really great year. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.